If you're a parent who built a good life, career, house, kids, you likely carry a question you've never said out loud. Would I even know if something were wrong with my kid? Almost everything our generation was taught about drugs never told us actually what to do. Today, you'll hear why Just Say No failed an entire generation, what actually keeps kids off drugs, and the warning signs. Plus, one step that you can take this week. My guest, Dave Kopeny, spent 30 years with teens, families, as a teacher, counselor, and intensive probation officer. Today, he trains parents through ASAP Community and his book, Tip of the Spear. Please welcome Dave. How are
Thank
you?
you, Massimo. I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to have you here. So, Dave, a lot of us grew up on Just Say No and the D.A.R.E. assembly, that pledge, the t shirt, and the evidence is pretty clear that it didn't work. So, let's skip the history lesson. For the parent listening tonight who wants to actually protect their kid, what really works and what is the very first thing they should start doing at home this week?
Well, first off, I think it's good for parents to take a step back and look at the last 50 years. We lost 7,000 people in 1970 and decided that was a problem, which it was. Well, since then, we've lost 1.25 million people to drugs. And we've done it from a reactive standpoint. We have uh, attempted legislation, enforcement, punishment, and history shows us that has not worked. It does not work. And taking it to the schools, taking it right to the child does not work either. You know, the D.A.R.E. program, you remember they come into the school and they give you a 2-hour lecture on they scare you on what drugs can do. And the sad part is compared today, those drugs are very tame. It's a different culture today. And we didn't look at addiction as a disease either. And, you know, this varies. Some people think it is. Most people believe it's an addiction, disease, but to an extent. Personally, I think that yes, it might be a decision to take that first hit, dab, snort, drink. But after that, we all vary in terms of our susceptibility to it. I grew up in a family where father was alcoholic and 6 brothers, and we all reacted to our drug experimentation for whatever reason. Some, it was self-medication. For others, it was experimentation. For me, my brother gave me acid when I was 9, just to that's just what you did. That's what, you know, the drugs will come from family, friends, or social media. Those 3 things. But there's so many variables about, 1, how you're gonna react, and 2, about why you're going to react. Is it trauma? Is it bullying? Is it just trying to fit in? And we don't know the answer to that. And so being a part of the war on drugs and seeing our reactive endeavors that, you know, while I'm doing it, I lost my brother and a sister-in-law to drugs. While I'm working drug cases, I couldn't even help my own family. And, you know, the National Institutes of Health, and I believe for years, I don't care what your daughter or your son says to you, you are the most impactful person in their life. The most. And so my goal, my mission is to really block the noise, give parents the facts about what's going on in this world. True facts. They don't have to get hyperbolic about the facts because they are bad. They are scary. And give it to our children who are smart enough to understand. I really believe that they are.
Let's talk about the families who think this could never be them. What are the warning signs of hidden drug use that high achieving, everything looks great family that they would miss, and explain away, they're just being a teenager?
Yeah, good question. You know, it does hit every family now because there are 3 ways a child will be introduced to drugs: through family, as I was, through friends or peers, but now we have social media and influencers and bad actors who marketers who want to make a lot of money off drug paraphernalia, off of drugs, drug marketplaces. And it is so easy to purchase drugs today. It's nothing like it ever was. So every family is susceptible. Unless your child doesn't have a phone and they don't have friends and they don't have siblings, if that's your child, then maybe you can keep them safe from being influenced or taking a drug hit, you know? Um, but the pressures of getting high can come from so many areas, like any addiction. It can be self-medication. There can be mental health issues that are undiagnosed. It can be bullying. It can be just wanting to fit in. It can be experimentation. But even experimentation with the marijuana and these other drugs that contain fentanyl, they're very addictive. The first time, you could be addictive. You like that. You like that high. And, we're dealing with a drug that we've never dealt with before. And, I tell families, I said, in the history of mankind, today is the most dangerous time to take drugs or, abuse drugs or be addicted to drugs because they are so addictive and they are so prevalent and they are cheap and they're lethal. No other time. But that's all going to change tomorrow because they're going to be more prevalent, more lethal, and more harmful. Marijuana is incredibly addictive. This isn't the Woodstock days of 2, 3, 4, 5% THC. This is the days of 20, regular 20 and 30%, which means it's 6 times stronger, and it goes up to 90%, which is what is that? 20 times stronger. And it's addictive. With THC comes addiction. And it's a big money industry.
Yeah. But
Legal
it's
marijuana.
also, and not just from the addictive standpoint, but also from the mind alteration standpoint, the addiction probably becomes stronger for the person because it's literally unmooring them from reality even further than it did 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's an entirely different experience using those drugs.
100%. And, I get it. A lot of it I deal with the kids, with the brain not being developed. And I have friends, family members who like their gummies and they like their weed. But you know what? They also have a brain that's fully developed and they have a life that's fully developed. And they're emotionally stable. They get mad, they get angry, but that's not really why they're getting high because it helps their knees get better or their back, or they think it helps them sleep better. But they understand the ramifications of their use too, and they're willing to go there. I can't wait to get home to have a glass of wine with my wife every night on our back deck. I get it. It's not the healthiest thing in the world, but nobody's telling me this is a healthy alternative like we're doing with marijuana and some of these other drugs. It's just the landscape, the addictive drug landscape is nothing like it was when we were growing up. And just saying no today, there's no just about it. It's hard. It's really hard. And I bring up, kratom is the drink kratom. It's a natural opioid from Southeast Asia. It's on the news a lot today, and you have, unfortunately, politicians who want to regulate it, and you have moms who have lost a child, partly due because of their kratom intake. When I was a kid and I wanted something to drink at the gas station, I bought a Coke. I drank too many Cokes. I ended up in the dentist's office with cavities. Today's kids go and they can buy Kratom, a Kratom drink with 7-0. They drink too many, they can end up in rehab, and they take it with another depressant, they could end up dead. So that's the difference between when we were kids and today. And our kids, they don't they don't stand a chance. It's not a fair fight. They don't understand what they're doing to their body. And you have people out there, um, I was looking some things up the other day and I saw hoodies for sale that promotes the fact you can wear this, hide your drugs in it, and put it in a vape, suck on your vape through the little string, and it says teachers won't know, your parents won't know. For anybody to do that to a child it's criminal. And unfortunately, we don't hold them accountable for that kind of thing. But it's a different world. We need to protect our kids. And to get back to the second part of your question, how do you know? Because it's hard to know. Is my child going through teenage angst, just normal things, or is there a problem? And I will tell you, the best thing is intuition. And I have pretty good intuition. I've worked with families my whole career. My wife is like a Geiger counter in terms of our children and intuition. Moms are the ones that call me. I think my kid's got a problem. Can you verify? Can you help us? How do we find out? And the dads are like, I don't think I did that when I was a kid. Uh, I'll talk to them. I'll tell them not to do it. I'll tell them to just say no. Pretty much is what they're saying. I'll fix it for them. And it's hard, sometimes dads present an obstacle for me to get them to understand and empathize. But back to recognizing it, that pit in your stomach. If you think something's not right and you think it might be drugs or some external thing that's happening with your child, you're probably right. If you think you know how much, a good rule of thumb is if you think you know how much they're getting high, how often they're doing it, triple it and you'll be closer to the answer. So back to angst, a lot of kids, they want to be alone. They don't want to hang out with their parents. That's perfectly normal. However, if they are isolated and they don't have anybody to talk to, they don't have a mentor, they don't have a parent, their friends, you're not sure about their friends. If they're a good influence, they're not really talking to friends or hanging out in the basement. That's a sign. If their hygiene changes, a lot of kids don't want to take a shower. However, if their laundry's on the floor and you got to tell 'em, pick up your laundry, make your bed, whatever it might be. But if it goes beyond that, where their room is always darked out, dimmed lights, and it gets messy, they start eating food up there. And their hygiene, their personal hygiene, they don't take showers. They wear a lot of perfume. They wear a lot of cologne, not only to mask maybe body odor, but to mask if they're getting high. That's another sign. Anger. Kids get angry. They're trying to control their emotions. They're trying to figure out what they can get away with, what they can't, what makes them. That's okay for them to get angry. But if it turns into violence or if it turns into almost a bipolar up, down, just not quite right, could be a couple of things. It's a mental health issue, or maybe they're getting high. Either one needs to be addressed. They need your help. They're trying, parents, I'm so confused. I'm so angry. I don't know what's going on. Your child doesn't either. They really don't. If they're 15, 16, they're getting high. It's very rare if a child will tell you, I'm getting high because I'm depressed. I'm getting high. They don't see it. Parents need to be aware. And then it comes to the things you can do, the monitoring, the supervision to find out. And
Yeah.
two stories I talk about is both families thought their child was getting high. Happened to be both two girls, separate families. The one family that I talked to, I went over there when the daughter was gone and we searched her room and very respectful about it. Everything went back in its place. This wasn't a gotcha moment. This wasn't a punishment. They were scared. They were scared for their daughter. And we did a thorough search and when I showed them how to really get in, looking inside pockets of coats hanging in you know, up in the closet and in the waste bin and where else, whatever other things, fake water bottles, that kind of thing. We went through it and they found drugs. They took pictures of it and discarded it. And then the mom and dad got together and said, what are we going to do? How are we going to be a united front and talk to our daughter? They talked about the things they wanted to see from her to change, but they wanted to get to the root of why she was getting high too. She came home and they sat her down and they didn't attack her. They didn't shame her. They didn't attack her character, but they talked about her behavior. They were instilling accountability without the shame. And how can we deal with this? The conversation was, we love you so much and we can't let anything happen to you. And then they talked about their history for the first time, which a lot of addictive households, as you know, don't talk about anything. Do not talk about it. Don't tell the neighbors. Don't tell the friends. Don't. And they talked about it. And they got to the point where maybe we should go see a counselor. Maybe we should go see a therapist. What do you want us to do to their daughter to help you? Now, this is what you need to do. And we can't have you driving the car if you're high. We just can't do it. So we have to take your license. Drug tests are coming. That was one way to handle it. Another family, they called me 10 o'clock at night, said, got in a fight with our daughter, argument. We went into a room and started searching. She followed us. She got mad. We found drugs. She snatched the drugs. She hit my wife. She ran away. I found her 3 days later in a hotel. and it took a lot to overcome that. But now you got all these other issues. They were so angry, and I get it. I grew up in an addictive household. You feel guilt, you feel shame, you feel mad, you feel helpless. Maybe all in 5 minutes. You know, you can't expect your child to be you can't expect them to keep their emotions together while you're talking about this if you can't do it. And if you can't do it, you can't talk. If you can't keep them in check, you can't have that conversation, at least at that point. So parents very much need to understand the facts, understand what their kids are going through, know what's in their house, know what's in their Amazon cart, because Amazon will sell your kid things to hide their drugs too. And have some empathy for what your child's going through. This isn't you against your child. This is you and your child, battling addiction, battling abuse, and they need your help. I have been in 1,000 courtrooms with judges and cops, and I was probation officer. I was a gang investigator with the sheriff's department. We can help. Therapists can help. Social workers, we can help, but not like the parent. There is not the parent that's their superpower.
Before we get away from this interventionist type of situation, because there's definitely a right and a wrong way to intervene with your child. And you just gave us two incredible stories that go in opposite directions from one another. Not to say that the love of the parent was wrong in or not meaningful in both cases, yet
Yes.
one had an entirely different positive outcome than the other. So, from your standpoint, what is the best first move? And why do parents wait too long to make it?
Another good question. The best first move, I talk to parents about start from here and work out. Then go. If you think your child has a problem, start here. Okay. Do I have a problem? And not necessarily, again, it's not my love for my child that I'm questioning, but am I doing certain things that are sending a message to my child that I should explain? Am I going up to the store and getting gummies and taking them at night and make me feel good? And the child doesn't. But that's a message that needs to be talked about. Having beers with the kids, my kids, I have a glass of wine with my wife every night. I can't wait. The kids are around, but I make sure they understand not necessarily the ramifications, because I haven't had ramifications from that, but where it could go. So first, talk about yourself. What are you doing? Are you okay with them getting high? And if that's the case, we have to do some facts. You just got to educate yourself. And if you educate yourself, I talk in my book, I go over all the facts. A little bit while we talked about the strength of marijuana today. Fentanyl is found in 7 out of 10 drugs. I mean, really good what kratom is. And learn the facts and decide if you think that warrants a conversation with your child. But make it a learning experience and talk about your family. If there's history of drug abuse, substance abuse, self-harm, I had all of that in my household. We never talked about it. You can be damn sure my kids know about it. And it took me a long time to tell my kids some of these things because it's some painful stuff. But if that at least my kids are learning from it, and I want them to know that they got this either in their genes, in their blood, in my blood. Some things, maybe I raised them. I did some things as they were growing up. A lot of that is based on how I was raised, and I'm putting it off on them. I need to understand that too. So it's a lot of learning. So then you look at your siblings. Are there siblings? Are there triggers? Are older siblings using? That's a big thing. Older siblings are not great at helping out their younger siblings when it comes to this problem. Your partner, I go into a lot of homes, and it could be both. I'm certainly not picking on dads. Uh, The majority is dads that don't see the problem, that have maybe their own issues, could be abuse issues, or it could be we dads, we don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about my dad. I'm done with that. That's gone, and that's who we are as a species. Men have a hard time with that kind of thing. So look at that. Then the next step, you go to your child. And then from there, you go out. How's he doing in school? Coaches, mentors. Pull these people in and don't be afraid to ask for help. That's the big part of this. That's what addiction wants, by the way. Addiction wants your child for themselves. My brother passed away from drug abuse in a basement apartment of which I was never invited to, nor I ever visited. I just been done with it. We'd been over this. He'd been in jail and rehab, and I'm picking up from bars. I'm picking him up from hospitals, and I was done. He pushed me away. The drugs pushed me away, and they succeeded. That's what drugs want. They want your child alone in the basement. They want you to ignore it. They want you to go away, and your child, they're gonna make your child call you names and do things to make you wanna just throw up your hands and say, "Enough. I don't wanna talk about it. I don't wanna fight tonight." My mom, at one point, years ago, she has all these boys in the house, and my dad's alcoholic, it could be violent, and she went to Al-Anon. She came home, and he found out about it. He left for 2 weeks, he just left us, and he made sure we knew this topic does not leave this house. It doesn't go outside these walls. Doesn't go to a therapist, doesn't go to a neighbor, doesn't go to a grandma, a grandpa. It does not leave this house. And he won. The drugs won. We kept it to ourselves. We didn't talk about it. So that's what drugs and alcohol addiction wants. They want your child to themselves. And so that's what you have to understand. You're there to help your child, not to punish them or make them feel less than what they are. It's trying to figure this thing out.
And that's exactly what I think is most meaningful. I want to turn the lens on you for a minute and your background. So you spent the bulk of 30 years as an intensive probation officer and in a room with a lot of teens and families and some of the worst moments imaginable, I would think. What did you see there that ordinary parents never see? And what's one thing that you would want them to know the most about that experience?
Growing up in an addictive household, you develop a sixth sense and you know if something is just not right. The tension, you can see it on people's faces. I'd walk in the door and see my mom's face and know I'm not staying. I'm walking out that back door. And she'd have that save yourself look like things are not good right now. And it prepared me well working with families. But when you say, what ordinary families don't see, my families were ordinary. And the problem was they all thought it was just their problem. They didn't want the school to know. They didn't want family members. They didn't want the neighbors to know. And I tell them, well, guess what? After I leave here, I'm going to the neighbor's house because they have the same issues. So we can work together. I was always trying to put parents together. I'd have parent meetings. Leave your kids home. Come, we're going to talk about it. Probation is set up where I'm the eyes and ears of the court, where the child now, and that's the problem with the juvenile justice system, is it takes a long time for that child to start using, to start abusing, to get addicted. And now those behaviors fester, though, and really become apparent to others besides those that live in the house. That takes a long time. And with me, it was a crime. Now, these crimes, all of my guys and girls on probation, there was drugs involved, but in a way that they could have been high when they committed the crime, or they committed a crime to get high, or they got high and their cognitive thinking just wasn't right. And it affected how they made their decisions and affected now if it's affecting their decisions, it's affecting their actions. So I had to get that under control first. Before we could move on, I had to get those drugs out of their system, whether it was a little bit or a lot, dose dependent. If they were doing a little bit, then there were a little bit of problems. If they were doing a lot, there were a lot of problems associated with the drug use. And, you know, it's just important for these families to understand it's not shameful. It's not because you're a bad parent. It's not because you have a bad child. It just is. It comes at you from all different angles, and every child is different. And what is going to connect with them? Who knows? Who knows? And I tell them, I'm sorry, but your child may have to hit rock bottom, or your son or your uncle. or maybe they don't. We don't know, and your child doesn't know either, but we're gonna try everything. The first thing to do is to get the drugs under control, and you do that with rewards, and you do that with some consequences. And it's hard to get parents to understand there's not a consequence you can do that's gonna fix this. It's a process, you know? It's going to take work by both parents, and it's gonna be keep the family accountable. If you want that child to be you can't just drop the child off at therapy and pick them up in an hour and think everything's better. And, you know, that was part of the problem as an intensive probation officer before I went to the sheriff department. We would send kids away to rehab. It was very common to do that for 30, 60, 90, 180 days, maybe a year. It was very common if there were mental health issues. Lots of money, lots of tax dollars. The kids would do wonderful. And when I say kids, for your audience, everybody's a kid to me now. You know, if they were 25, I call them a kid, right? But they would do wonderful in rehab, in this simulated setting. They have all the right things. They know what their triggers are, and there were no changes made at home. They get out, they drive home, and they go right back to that bedroom. They get called by the same exact friends. The older brother's down in the basement getting high. It was a matter of hours sometimes. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars and hard work by the child gone because they go right back to what they were doing. And the parents hadn't changed either. So I say, this is a family affair. This is everybody's accountable and you go down as a family or you raise all boats. And my family, we failed my brother. We did. We did. And my sister-in-law, who knows what we could have done to change things. And maybe nothing. Maybe nothing. But I wish I could sit here and tell you, I know I exhausted everything. I know. I went over there as many times as I could. I took him to the hospital but I didn't. I did, anger would get you. I'm not driving you today. I'm not picking you up. I've been through this 10 times. I'm not bailing you out. So it's difficult. And then there's the accountability of that family member. So you're always weighing that. And there's certainly accountability. And at some point, you need to know I can't do anymore. I've done all I could for them. And now it's up to them. Um,
Yeah.
Families need to understand again, this isn't every family problem. Doesn't matter your money, your denomination, your religion, your politics. It doesn't mean any of that, especially in this country. We're the most addictive country in the world by far, bar none. And, this is more about it's a problem and we're going to deal with it. It's not unique.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Well, Dave, on this show, the sober method is the master framework that people use for their own sobriety and confidence. And its first working step is observe, which is watching patterns honestly without judgment or shame. Your whole approach with ASAP is built on the same type of compassionate, non judgmental stance, just pointed at a child instead of directly at yourself. When the patterns a parent is observing belong to their own kid, don't accuse, it gets a lot harder because the parent wants to overtake. What's the best way that the parent can find themselves to approach this in a non judgmental observation long enough to see it clearly and then move calmly to the next step so it doesn't look like they're trying to control them out of fear?
hmm It's, it is hard. It's an emotional subject. And you love your child. You're afraid. A lot of that emotion comes from being scared and the anger. And it is hard. It's not easy. And some of it, again, we talked about looking at yourself. What are you doing? Are you triggering your child in some way? What I could say is the first thing you need to do is get together with your partner, a child's mother or father or stepmother or stepfather, or just your partner or just another adult. Because taking this on solo is very, very difficult. I talk to a lot of separated parents who don't agree on anything, but there's still a lot of tension between them. But we talk about this isn't about you, this is about your child. So if you can't come together for your child, we got to do something about that. This is about the child, but you need unity, you need support. Your child, if your child's wrath comes because you wanna take their drugs away, something they think is making them feel good, something that may be their best friend in this world, they're gonna lash out and expect it. But it's good to have a partner there to help with that burden. If, you need to take time and you can't approach the subject because you're emotionally charged, don't approach the subject. My dad, I would have these arguments with him, "Why don't you stop drinking?" Why when he's under the influence. And looking back, it was just my anger. I didn't know what else to do. Time to have that conversation is when he wasn't drinking. And even then it was difficult. But, you cannot do this if your child's high. You can't lash out. Do not have this any conversation with your child if they're high, or if you're under the influence, if you did some gummies to go to sleep and your child came home late, now you have to get up and deal with it. Now's not time. Pick your moments and get a support group around yourself. Talk to schools. If your child's in high school, the dean is awesome, a counselor. This is what I'm seeing at home. This is what I'm dealing with. What are you guys seeing? Can you help me with this? And let your child know we're not doing this behind your child's back. Let your child know this is a problem. This is my responsibility to take care of you the best I can as your parent. And it's your responsibility too. And your child's going to tell you, don't tell the school. They hate me. They don't like me. They're going to give you 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't reach out. And again, understand it's the drugs talking. It's not your child. They are as confused and as hurt and angry as you are. But you got to flip that. This is you. I keep saying you and your child against abuse and addiction. Education is the best thing for that. Counseling is awesome. I'm surprised that I get, they fight me a lot. We don't want to see a therapist. We don't have time. Well, a good therapist is priceless. Now we can do it telehealth, so it makes it much easier for younger kids running around. You don't have time. But this is not going to be fixed in one day, not going to be fixed in a week, but every day you can make progress. Even if you step back, that's still progress from yesterday. If something was talked about, something was looked at, even that's progress.
Yeah, no, what you're saying, even a step back is a step forward because it's new information. So, everyone listening, before we go, here is one move that I want you to make this week, inspired by Dave's work, and it starts with the observe step of Silver Method. This week, have one genuine, curious, non accusatory conversation with your child, not an interrogation, not a lecture, just real connection with no agenda. An involved parent is the single biggest proactive factor against a child using. So open the line before you ever need it. Ask, listen, and notice. Observe without accusing and pay attention to what you learn. If any part raised a flag, go to asapcommunity.org. That's Dave's site and start your free access. This is how we protect our kids the way that it actually works, not with fear, but with presence, honest observation, and a plan. Now, Dave, we have a tradition on this podcast where each guest answers a question left by my last guest. Aiden Castaneda left you this question. What is the most important thing in your life worth fighting for to ensure you stay clean for the rest of your life? And who is that important person for you?
I would say, without a doubt, when it comes to addiction and what I have found is, and I wish I had come up with this saying myself because it's brilliant. Johann Hari said, the opposite of addiction is connection. And being connected to something, someone, Mother Nature, something, connection is the key. And it can be a pat on the shoulder, a teacher, pat on the shoulder to a kid. How you doing today? It can be a connection to your past. And, you know, connect, don't ignore your past. I'm going to leave you with one story on connection. And my mom, she passed away from cancer, but she was in her house when she passed. And she never talked about, I found out through the hospice worker, actually, that she was abused when she was a child. And a light bulb went off in my head. She was so attentive to her kids. She was almost made us paranoid of people, not trusting people. And with my daughters, she watched them like a hawk. She didn't trust anybody with them. And so the point kind of it wasn't a problem, but it was like, "Ma, you gotta relax. You're making our kids scared to go outside, whatever. The teacher, they won't trust anybody." Then I found out that she was abused when she was a child, and her literal last breaths, we were together when she passed away, was, "Are your girls safe?" Literally, that was what she carried when she left this world, her fear of what could happen to my girls. And she never when I say connected to her past, she never looked at it and analyzed it and tried to figure it out and help herself, but all that, whatever what those things that happened to her when she was 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, affected my kids 80 years later and affected me. So you gotta connect. We put so much onto our kids. Connect with your family, connect with the past, and and connect with the future. Try to make these things flow. And so I would have to say connection, some kind of connection. And again, with something or somebody or your own past to make it all try to figure it out.
That's so powerful. That was a powerful story. Thank you for that, Dave. Well, to everyone listening, keep observing and journaling your own behaviors daily. My new book, Digital Sober Method, is available now. If your phone is the fight you're in, then this is your playbook. Pick up a copy today. This is the Sober Method Podcast. Please follow, like, subscribe, leave a review, and I ask you that you share this episode with any parent who needs to hear it. Remember, everyone, your future is sober.